Hi everyone. So I just talked about Jacob's Ladder, and I talked about how some horror movies actually have really deep meaning in them, uh, and have a lot of symbolism in it, even more so than some of the so-called Christian movies. Of course, most Christians wouldn't watch horror movies, so they don't know what they're missing. Because some of them are really philosophical and really have a deep meaning and are really symbolical. And of course, probably the most famous and best example for that is Jacob's Ladder. But I already talked about that, so I wanna talk about another movie that a lot of people have been comparing to Jacob's Ladder. Uh, and that is a fairly recent movie, and that is As Above, So Below. And for a lot of recent horror movies, it was the same when I watched D Babadook. When I first watched it, I was like, I don't know, this is just a cheap horror movie. I had that kind of feeling. And then I watched it again and I realized, okay, it actually does have a lot of symbolism that I didn't notice at first. So it was the same with As Above, So Below, which at first it looked to me like your typical cheap horror movie coming out nowadays, with cheap jump scares to scare people. That's about it. And then I realized, no, it does actually have a lot of symbolism. And well, it is fairly obvious, but if you actually, the symbolism in the Babadook was fairly obvious as well. But unlike Jacob's Ladder, it doesn't really explain itself. It doesn't really spoon feed you. So actually, that's a good thing, if you're not being spoon fed. But of course, then if you're not being spoon fed, there will be a lot of people who don't get it and who therefore think, "Oh, this is just another cheap horror movie," which it isn't. Well, it's relatively obvious, but As Above, So Below is, of course, about it's similar to Jacob's Ladder in the sense that it is about hell. And actually, if you watch Jacob's Ladder and you pay close attention, you can see that Jacob is reading, among other books, is reading Dante's Divine Comedy. In particular, of course, Dantes Inferno. And Jacob's Ladder borrows some elements of Dante's Inferno, but if you say that Jacob's Ladder borrows elements of Dante's Inferno, then As Above, So Below basically is Dante's Inferno. Well, it isn't a faithful adaptation, of course, but it really basically represents hell as seen or as described in Dante's Inferno. That's actually literally the version of hell they're depicting there, and that's what it is all about. It's all about, at least As Above, So Below. It's all about depicting hell, and it's depicted in the exact same way as in Dante's Inferno. And it's also, well, on top of that, it's very symbolical, and it's very psychological. So when I talked about Jacob's Ladder, I said that it is a misconception to think that Jacob, the protagonist of Jacob's Ladder, has been dead all along, because that's actually not the case. But at least this is my interpretation. And of course, spoiler, it's the case in this movie, as above, so below. At least this is my interpretation. You know, and the protagonist in as above, so below is I forgot what her name was. It was basically a poor man's Lara Croft, pretty much. Come on, she was basically Lara Croft. Really, she was a poor man's Lara Croft. You know, they should have made that actually Lara Croft, but they probably couldn't afford the the copyright. But anyway, so I'll just call. Sorry, I don't even want to look up her name, because for me, she was just Lara Croft. Okay, she really is. So I just call the protagonist of As Above, So Below. I just call her Lara. Okay, forgive me. For me, I want her to be Lara Croft. Not that I want Lara Croft to die, but well, she is resurrected at the end. So anyway, the way I see it, she dies right at the beginning of the movie. Well, not entirely at the beginning, you know. We see her going to Iran, I think, and enter that cave that is about to be blown up. And then the cave is blown up with her in it. And at that point, I already thought, well, she's gotta be dead. But miraculously, she survived without a scratch, which doesn't actually make sense. So I think that's when she died. And that does make sense, because after that, weird things start happening. And before that, nothing weird happens. A lot of people say, oh, well, they enter hell when they're in the catacombs, much later in the movie, and they're passing the gate where it says, it's a quote from Dantes Inferno, those who enter here lose all hope, or something like that, and that's basically what's written on the gates of hell in Dante's Inferno. And so a lot of people think, oh yeah, at that point they're entering hell. I disagree, because weird things started happening much earlier in the movie. So weird things started happening right after the explosion in Iran. So I think that's when she was killed. And then it becomes very similar to Chekhov's ladder, in the sense that she's basically experiencing hell. And right after that explosion, she sees a man hanging from the ceiling, a man who has been hanged. You know, obviously a man who the Taliban hanged, or who's been hanged by some of those extremists, and he's hanging there from the ceiling in the cave. But the cave was just blown up, so there shouldn't even be a cave anymore. And besides, we saw how she entered into the cave, and it was the same way. And when she entered into the cave, there was no one hanging from the ceiling. Then the cave gets blown up, and which should have killed her. And then she suddenly starts seeing a man hanging from the ceiling, where a second ago there was nothing. And that man just so happens to look exactly the same and die in exactly the same manner as her father died. Huh, what a coincidence. So it's either a very poor movie, or it's actually a brilliant movie. So actually, when I watched this movie for the first time, I noticed right away a lot of flaws in the movie, and I just thought, this is such a bad movie. There's such obvious flaws, like the man hanging from the ceiling who didn't hang there a second ago. So I thought, this is such a poor production. They just have people appearing that went in the same shot a second ago. Such a poor production, I thought. And then later on, you have so many mistakes, and obvious mistakes in the movie. Let's not even go into any historical details, because of course they're all pretty much made up. But it's just so obvious, such obvious things. Like, for example, and that really put me off. And I really had a problem with that. And I really thought, okay, this is such a crappy movie, I'm not gonna go on watch this. And that is when they decipher the code, and the code is supposed to be written in Aramaic, and she brings along the translator to translate the code from Aramaic to English, and in English it's a poem. I mean, it is literally an English poem. It rhymes. Every sentence in that poem rhymes in English. But he just translated it at that moment from Aramaic to English. So how is it how can it possibly rhyme in English? Okay, maybe it rhymes in Aramaic, but how can it possibly rhyme in English if he's just translating it from Aramaic just at that very second? So I thought, okay, this has so many mistakes in it, and there are more obvious mistakes in it. But then I realized that if you view it the way I'm trying to explain here, then those aren't mistakes, and they're pretty much deliberate. Well, I don't know about the thing about the rhyming poem. Well, yeah, I guess. Well, it pretty much, but it excuses that mistake, because if she's already dead, and if this is her dying dream or whatever, and or if she if she's in hell, then she would experience things from her perspective. So then I guess it's okay, and it's the same with with the guy hanging from the ceilings, and a lot of things that I thought were mistakes. They're not. They're not mistakes, and they're intentional, because she's already dead at that point, and those things happen because they are related to her past. Basically, they were related to her sins, pretty much. So this is what's happening throughout the movie. Is the people who go down the cave, they are confronted basically with their past sins, things that they did wrong, and that they don't want to deal with, they don't want to think about, and they're confronted with them, so basically so that they can redeem themselves, and at the end, when they when they really feel sorry for what they did, and they really confront themselves with what they did wrong, that is basically when they are redeemed, and when they find a way out. And in Dantes Inferno, Dante has to go through all of the 9 levels of hell in order to get out again. That's the only way out, is to go further down, is to go through all the levels of hell, and only then is he redeemed, and is he able to get out. And yeah, it's exactly the same with the people in the movie, and it's even the same, that even the way they get out is exactly the same. What happens is that after Dante passed through the 9th level of hell, gravity is reversed, and he comes out the other side. And that's exactly what happens with them. They go through all the different levels of hell, uh, and at the end they are redeemed, and they are confronted with their sins, and they are redeemed, and then gravity reverses, and they go out the other side. It's exactly like in Dante's Inferno, and there are a lot of things that are exactly like in Dante's Inferno. Also, the way some of the people who die, the way they die is exactly like how some of the people in Dante's Inferno are being punished in hell. Well, actually, at the beginning, they could probably go back up. They could go back up again. At the beginning, they could still go back and go back out the way they came in. But what happens is that when they see that secret chamber with all the treasure, and they see all the gold, some of them get greedy, and they want to take the gold, and it's their greed that traps them. It's only it's their greed. It's all about their sins. So each of the people who go down there have committed different sins, have committed different sins in their lives, and have done different wrong things, and basically they have basically they have to pay they have to pay for that, basically, because they're in hell pretty much. So each of them is confronted with their main sin pretty much. For some of them it is greed, and you can see what each of them did wrong. Each of them is confronted with their individual sins, and some of them realize that they made a mistake, and they genuinely feel sorry for it, and then they were eventually after they suffered for it, they were eventually redeemed. Some of them don't see their mistake, like the people who get greedy, and they continue the same way and are still greedy, and so that's actually and then eventually some of those eventually don't make it out, because they still, even when confronted with their sins, they still continue on their old ways, and those are the ones who don't make it out at the end. And of course, their greed is what traps them there in the first place. And I also find it interesting that the movie starts in that cave in Iran, and I think that's where she died. So, and then the rest of the movie pretty much also takes place in a cave, in the catacombs in Paris, which are actually the real catacombs. That wasn't a set. That they filmed that in the real catacombs. So I don't think that's a coincidence either. So if you assume that she died in a cave, it would make sense that and of course her being an archaeologist, it would make sense that her hell would take the form of a cave. And besides, the catacombs in France, they pretty much look like hell to begin with. and you see all the bones in the catacombs, and you see them in the movie. You know you see them in the movie too, and those are the real bones. Those aren't props. Those are the real bones in the catacombs. And they've actually been arranged that way. You know, they made different shapes out of them. You know, maybe in the form of a cross and so on. And those weren't props. Those were the real bones in the real catacombs. So yeah, it pretty much looks like hell to begin with. But at the same time, it's of course a very fitting form of hell for an archaeologist who died in a cave when the Taliban or whatever exploded the cave. So yeah, I think it does make sense. Yeah, and that also explains a lot of people have been seeing this as a mistake as well. When they were in Paris, before they go down the catacombs, there were already some weird things happening, and they basically see a lot of people, like for example in a nightclub, which actually is a real nightclub as well. It's not a set; it's a real nightclub in Paris. But anyway, they see a lot of they see a lot of it's kind of, for me, it kind of reminded me of that dance party scene in Jacob's Ladder, you know. And actually, it reminds me of pretty much any party I've ever been to, because I'm not the kind of guy. I don't like those modern dance clubs where they play I don't know, techno music. Do they even play that anymore? Oh, they probably don't even play that anymore. But but see, I'm a guy. I like chess, and I like well, actually, chess is already kind of modern to me. So you know, I like Frank Sinatra, Cab Calloway, and you know, like those flappers, like Libby Holman, you know, that kind of music that like was popular in the 20s and 30s and maybe 40s, and anything that comes like after 1950 or something, that's already too modern for me. That's, you know, so you can imagine when I go to when I go to a modern dance club or something, you can imagine how I feel. I see all those gloomy lights and the black light, and the fluorescence lights and you know, all the lights flickering, and it's dark, and it just has those lights flickering, and it has that you know, kind of dark music, and you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe they're playing whatever, I don't know, heavy metal, I don't know, I don't even know all that stuff, you know. You know, I had a friend, and we used to live in a dorm together, and he was in a death metal band, and black metal, death metal, and so he played death metal and black metal, you know. so you can imagine, you know, how I feel when confronted with those modern forms of music, or when in a club like that. I feel exactly like Jacob's Ladder, like Jacob in Jacob's Ladder when he's at the dance party, and they're playing that gloomy music and the gloomy lights, and then everyone turns into demons. That's kind of how I feel every time when I visit a dance club. That's why I don't visit them. And yeah, it's the same with the dance club scene in this movie. It's very gloomy, and there are a lot of let's say weird creatures there, that actually later in the movie we see the same people again, the same people they see in the dance club, we see them again in the catacombs, and they turn out to be demons. Pretty much. So a lot of people are like, well, isn't that a mistake? Why are they already seeing demons in the dance club when they haven't even gone down to the catacombs yet, and haven't even passed the gate where it says, that was literally the gate of hell, where it says, all who enter here lose all hope, So if this is still reality, why are they already seeing demons? Well, I think that confirms my theory that our main protagonist is already dead and already died in Iran, in a cave in Iran. Yeah. So it's not a mistake. So a lot of things that you see in the movie that at first you think are mistakes are actually deliberate. So it's actually a pretty good movie, and it's very psychological.